Welcome to the gym. This is where the day starts every single day in the morning. This is what we do every single day before our day starts. We come in and we wake up while we grind a workout and, maybe talk about our day.
Yeah.
Maybe we laugh, maybe we cry a little.
Yeah.
Things get real in here. And today they'll get real as well. Let's talk dark squares. Let's talk Audible, because Erik is in the book and there's a lot of things in the book that maybe Erik didn't know about my life, but there's also a lot of ways that I talk about my early relationship with Erik that is, I think, interesting for people. So let's do interims while we talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew Danny from work and we had been friends, but he as he said, he's kind of kept his lives a little bit separate. And so I really didn't know the depth of what he had been through as a human living in what I knew was kind of like a collective, and I thought it was maybe kind of like just like a community of like-minded people, living a little more remotely, and that's kind of really all I knew about it. So when he said he was going to write a book, I'd heard very recently, I kind of grew up in a cult, and I'm like, okay, I didn't really know. So I really wasn't sure, because not everything had come out about what it was, and I couldn't fathom the depth of what his experience had been in contrast to the badass, business partner person that I knew. So I didn't really know how it would be a book, to be honest.
I cried so many times reading the book, and I did not expect that. To read about, like, when you really care about somebody, and Danny and I are as close of friends as there can be, and when you read about hard things, bad things happening to somebody that you really love that much, you just can't help it but just feel all of it. On the one hand, I was like, oh, that is so hard. On the other hand, I was like, what an amazing, my admiration for him as a person grew so much, and as a friend, I'm like, what an amazing person to have gone through these hard things, but then to also just like channel all that, just how great that made him. So my whole feeling about him as a person grew tremendously. And my understanding of his world and everything he was bringing to chess and his mission and why it was so important to him and why sometimes he cried here in the gym and because he was feeling so deeply about something and where that was welling up from. It was a really special experience.
And why I could sometimes maybe be hard to deal with and intense. I joke a lot about the fact that Erik has been sort of dealing with really intense feelings and at times just like really unworked out processed stuff where I shouldn't be, so triggered or have so much of maybe my own self-worth wrapped up in an argument about a live chess feature. You know what I mean? And he's been dealing with that part of me that as I've learned in therapy, where I will pull the sword in a conversation where I've learned to not do that. He's been having to deal with that part of me without always knowing where it came from until very recently. So, all right, I'm gonna start here, and we're gonna rotate bench and evil wheel, chest and abs. So,
Danny talked a lot about doing an online coaching platform, kind of tournaments, and he had been living in that world of coaching and tournaments. And I think which made sense, but I was living on the other side as an amateur, casual enjoyer, fan of the game, and I was bringing that vision. I was thinking the MySpace of chess, and Danny was thinking, the Uber coaching of chess. And I was like, hey, that's interesting, maybe long term, but I really want to solve the other problem, which is how do players like me and below enjoy chess, not how do players who want to become a grandmaster enjoy chess. There's already tools for that, and I was bringing the bottom end of the market, and which is really what was fundamentally different about our approach from what was out there already. I mean, Yahoo Chess was at the very bottom of a horrible experience, trying to serve, the worst service was trying to serve the largest audience, and that's what we were trying to fix.
Erik was right, on the right place to focus, as he has As he has always been. I actually have no problem being like, Erik is right like 9 times out of 10 in every conversation we have. I was fundamentally coming from the same place, but trying to solve it through the framework that I understood, which is I was trying to help coaches and professionals who were living like starving artists and failing reach the large audiences because I knew it was broken. It was like, no, like they have so much more to do. There's so much more of an opportunity here. And so in some ways it's funny because we still haven't really we've talked about doing Uber coaching like forever and it still hasn't been done. So I guess it speaks for itself.
Find
right?
a chess coach on demand.
Right. But I think that all the things that regardless of that like high level thing, the reason for the conversation stemmed from the same place, which we both wanted like articles, content, videos. I wanted to provide, a marketplace and infrastructure for professionals to actually be able to make chess work for their lives. And Erik is like, chess doesn't work for amateurs because it is like gate kept, not accessible, and where is my home, right? So in some ways it was like the same goal, but very different kind of initial perspectives on how to get there.
Yeah, meeting Danny initially, there was what I at the time would have called arrogance a little bit. It was maybe just a little bit of approaches, but as I have got to know him more, and even through reading the book, what I had maybe thought was arrogance at the time really was, first of all, drive. Second of all, chip on his shoulder. And third of all, knowing what he went through in the environments and how he had to act and project as a person in his community and collective, bringing some of that high energy into that, where it was a little bit, there was like some chest, had to kind of chest thump a lot, knowing where he came from, and that's how people collided. And here I was just coming from Stanford Business School, where everyone's, how do you feel about, it was all feelings and all death and vulnerability and like, so I kind of understood that more. And it wasn't like over the top. He wasn't a bully or anything, but like he was just very strong and posturing a lot. And I was in the more like collaborative mindset. And I think that's why it initially kind of just didn't stick. But then I'm like, oh, there's talent there. So we brought him in kind of trial arm's length. And then he came to trust me. And then a lot of that went down, that posturing dropped. And then we immediately clicked into gear together and was just like, we just spun up super fast. Reading the book made me realize several things. One, I knew Danny had been a great chess player of his age. Like I kind of just said, oh, he was a very good chess player for his age. I think he had some, notable victories or things. I didn't know how dominant he was as a young chess player. I didn't really know, oh my gosh, he was like at the peak of his chess, and rising fast. So I thought he was somewhere, oh, he's good, but like, oh, they won multiple Scholastic championships. Oh, you're number one player. And I didn't even know that. I had known him for so long, but he never talks about, he doesn't brag like, well, it's not his personality to brag about that. So I didn't know how good he was at chess. And then I understood, oh my gosh, he was that good at chess. And then what happened to knock him off the trajectory that he had? And that was a heartbreaking thing to learn about. And then the other thing was, I didn't really fully understand at all why he had been on that trajectory. What was fueling this guy to climb and drive and push? Well, it was inside of him that made him feel like not only do I want to be the best chess player ever of all time, but I have to be. And I never understood that before reading the book. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I understand why he was on that path. Danny really had not talked much about the collective at all. I had gone and visited one time down to where he lived, and it just seemed like a normal kind of rural community. It was just an interesting place to be. It seemed really cool, chill, like kind of a different place of life. I grew up very suburban, and he had mentioned some teachings that were valuable to him, and I knew that there was a spiritual side to Danny.
I also think at one time he had mentioned kind of a medium and a spiritual source.
Had I done that?
I think one time in like one conversation, like years ago, and I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It was very different from my own religious
The
upbringing.
good thing is nobody really knew what it meant either. Nobody does. But
So they knew, yeah, there was something, like I think you had ventured at some point to mention something, but it wasn't enough for me to really understand it.
Yeah.
And I kind of put it away as like I don't really know what that is.
in some ways, I was still just right in the middle of it.
Yep.
You know?
And
so,
that's one thing I didn't know was
Yeah.
how much of your life was in the middle of this. And you very
Yeah.
much kept your, like, I'm driving chess as hard as I can, very separate from my life is kind of, my world is falling apart around me.
Yeah.
I'm, my wife and my family and I are good, but everything else is just like, crumbling out.
Well, in some ways, early on, even my wife and family, it was not good, right? It was crumbling. But I think there were a lot of reasons for that. I think in some ways, I really appreciated the part of our relationship as I did. I think even, you could probably even say 2 weeks ago, you and I had the kind of fight where Danny is pulling the sword and being too intense. And Erik has always been the person to, won't go into that now, but Erik is literally like the perfect human for me in many ways for what we have built here. But allowing me the space to kind of work through some of the intense stuff at times. But I think as I developed that trust and our relationship grew, I think I really valued the part of our life that like was just not connected to what I was dealing with.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it was funny because I think when some people have asked like, why did I write the book? In some ways, like as I said what I said then, or I had the thoughts of why I was gonna do this, and then now I reflect now and kind of go, is that still true? One of the big reasons is I felt this was a real opportunity for me to open up and be authentic with the relationships and the people who I was close to now who still weren't really that close to me because of this. It was like, I'm never gonna have a better opportunity to kind of bridge my life and like share in a way that, just makes me closer with people. And not that I was keeping it secret, but I wasn't leading with it in a way that, for understandable reasons, I felt like this was a chance for us to get closer. So in some ways I did it.
Yeah.
Like,
you did it for... No,
I did it for us. No,
That's adorable.
No, but really, I mean, it's because I don't know why we wrote the book. That's a whole other thing. But all right, we got to keep going.
Yeah.
Work out.
As the title says, dark squares, like, that's a part of the chessboard. There's the light squares and there's the dark squares, and sometimes everybody is, as they move around the chessboard of life, is sometimes on a light square and sometimes spending time on a dark square.
Except for light square bishop.
Except for light square, those guys live in like complete oblivion to how hard life
Everything
can
is
be.
always good for them.
Yeah.
Like,
That's funny. But I mean, look, we have hundreds of team members now, and on any given day, somebody is sick. On any given day, someone's family member died. On any given day, and then those are things that they will talk about. Then there's the things they're not talking about, which is, marital struggles, which is, religious transformations, which is fallouts with friends and family. That is happening to everyone all the time. And I think to have somebody like Danny open up so vulnerably about his actual life was really, really, really special, and will, as more and more people read this book inside of our company, maybe help other people open up about their lives. I will say I'm proud that we have a very open and human culture, and I show up into half my meetings wearing this exact same outfit. I'm not as like a serious buttoned up person. I'm all my feelings and thoughts are kind of out there in the open. And I think me being that way, but coming from like a relatively like very stable and positive home, but Danny coming from, being also that way of just everything is there out in the open. Here's who I am. I'm a real person. Oops, but I actually had a dark secret about my upbringing, but still being that person. And we kind of culturally, everyone's like, well, I guess if our company kind of founders and, the two top people of our company are kind of goofballs and very honest and, silly and authentic, then maybe we can be too. And that's something that I love about our company culture. Yeah, I think people reading the book we'll come away with a lot of different ideas and thoughts about it. I mean, there'll be thoughts about Danny and who he is as an individual, be thoughts about the chess world and what it is and how fascinating it is. There will be some thoughts about chess.com and that role in Danny's life and then in the world of chess. But I think stand alone on its own, keeping chess aside and Danny and those details out, this is like a deeply fundamental human story about what it is to go through the hardship. And maybe many people will be able to resonate, ooh, I see myself in there. And then there's other people, maybe like me, who will be not able to resonate in some ways and be like, wow, I had such a stable upbringing comparatively, and like gives me a lot of sympathy for, what others have gone through. And so, some people will feel very validated by reading Danny's work. Other people will feel touched and amazed by it and gratitude for their own lives. A lot of people go through a lot of hard stuff growing up. It's hard to grow up. And that hardship, I think, you think of the bell curve of it, I think the majority of people growing up in really difficult environments survive it. I think there's an unfortunate tale of people who get ground out by it and crushed by it. And then there's a very small number of people who thrive from it after it. Always take with them what happened, but who it actually fuels and motivates and drives out. And there's many people who've accomplished great things in this world, who grew up in very difficult circumstances and in many ways attribute that to their success. But I want to be mindful of people who have barely survived it and who were crushed by it, and that's really hard. The large group of people who love and appreciate Danny Rensch will love and appreciate him even more, as I have. A whole bunch of people, I think, in the middle there will move to at least understanding and appreciating a human being who's really doing his best to drive his mission, which is to make chess great and to bring chess to the pinnacle of its potential. And I think a lot of people who are like, whatever about chess.com or Danny Rensch especially, will have a different understanding of what that drive is for him, and slightly from me, just a little bit through that. And I think the people who are not Danny Rensch fans, his haters, hopefully some of them give him some props and kudos for the things he's done and where he's come from. And maybe there's a small minority of people who take it the other way, but I'm very excited to see the reaction of the chess community. I hope that anyone who reads this book can look at chess.com and at least understand that we have been motivated for the greatness of chess. And I understand that, there are people who don't agree with our decisions. There are people who don't understand our decisions. I recognize that a lot of things are done behind closed doors for the reasons that they are. But I also hope that people will see that these are people working here, especially led by Danny, who really are trying to protect and serve and grow the game that we deeply, deeply love. And there are people who have never tried to build anything, who respect how things are built and say, hey, I don't understand it, but I appreciate it. There's people who have never tried to build anything and only make past judgment and hate from the cheap seats. And we can't change everybody's minds, but I think that this will bring people along to at least understand better perspective of chess.com.
This is how chess.com starts every day. A city, a country, a website that never sleeps. So yeah, and if you didn't know this part of Erik or Erik and me together, now you do. And if you didn't know the Erik from Dark Squares, you're about to learn all about it. Whether you're listening to it or reading it, thank you for giving it a chance and for hearing my story. And I can't wait to hear what you think about it. So peace.